6-Speed Dakota here, and today we're working on this '05 Mazda 3 that I've worked on a couple of occasions. So today we're doing the passenger side front wheel bearing. Now, the reason that I'm doing this wheel bearing is because the wheel is loose, and we'll look at that in a second. So, stuff you're going to need, obviously you're going to need a new wheel bearing, which I don't have, it's at the parts store right now. And yeah, if your hub's in bad shape, you might as well just get the bearing and hub combo while you're at it. So this one, I'm not really sure what tools we're going to need. I guess we're just going to go at it as we go along. Yeah, pretty much. So let's get started. This isn't a super difficult job. It only bills 2 hours. So, but the only thing is that you have to be able to take the knuckle out and take it to a shop to have the bearing pressed out. So make sure you find yourself a good shop that's not going to hose you when you take it to them, because I had about 4 different shops want to charge me 1 hour's labor, which this is a 20-minute job to have it pressed out. But since I don't have a press, I'm kind of at their mercy. So I found a place that would charge me straight time, not screw me around on anything. So find a good place like that. And I kind of want to plug them, believe it or not. They're called Ladner Motors. They're really nice people, so yeah, they definitely deserve a plug for that. Alright, so let's get started, shall we? Alright, so the first thing is, how do we know that the wheel bearing's bad? Well, I was underneath it the other day, and you can see we got quite a bit of looseness here. So, how do we know that this isn't a ball joint? Well, a ball joint would be loose in this direction, but it wouldn't be loose in this direction. Also, the noise that it's making is kind of making a bit of a rubbing noise when you turn. So that's a pretty good characteristic that we got a bad wheel bearing here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the wheel off. Of course, I got the wrong socket. So this is a 21mm socket. Job. Then just give it a good little hit, and it should come right off. Grab the lug nut I dropped in behind there. Looks like we got an issue with something in here. Because as you can see by the tire wear here, we got some pretty serious wear on the inside here. These tires are shot. She's getting new ones as soon as she possibly can, which should be upcoming pretty soon. Alright, so now the next step, we need to get the caliper off. The nice thing I like about these, it says RH in big letters. So this is a little bit different style where we got a bolt that holds the CD shaft in, which hopefully isn't as stubborn as the nuts are. Alright, so start with a little pocket screwdriver. There's 2 caps in here. Pop those off. There we go. And now once those are off, we can take a hex bit of some sort. And in this case, it's a 7mm. So actually a pretty common size for brakes, but so like in every brake job, loosen the one, then loosen the other. And once both are loosened, you can start unbolting the sliders and pulling them out. just go ahead and service up the brakes while I'm at it. She was complaining that they were making noise. Okay, so now we're going to take our little pocket screwdriver, pop our little caliper anti-vibration clip off, and then we're going to take our caliper off and sit it somewhere safe where it won't fall. So now while we have access to it, there's an ABS connector up here. We're going to pull that off, if it will come off. Ouch. Now we got to be very, very careful we don't damage that sensor. So I'm going to take the outer brake pad off. As you can see, she's got quite a bit of meat on it. Okay. So now we must remove, that's probably way too big. Oh, maybe not. The caliper mounting bracket, which is a 17mm bolt. Loosen both and then remove. This is a pretty tiny little bolt. Looks like, to me, it's like a 13mm. Just loosen that guy off. That was actually fairly easy. Usually these things are a real pain to get out. There we go. And the axle slides out nicely. So we're in good shape there. Let's get the rotor off. Damaging it. We gotta be careful because there's the ABS sensor in there, so go down by the ear that holds the that's weird. Okay, so there's a little clip right here on top of the tie rod that holds that prevents it from falling out, so save that. That's very important. We can take our, I'm not sure what it is. Oh, that's way too big. Looks like a 14mm. Oh wow, that's really on there. Seems like a lock nut. Yeah, it is. No wonder it's so hard to get undone. It's actually awfully hot, this socket. Friction here is creating a little bit of heat. So now the question is, how do we get out the tie rod? Well, what we do is we take it, take the hammer and hit the ear where it goes through, and it comes right out. Now the other thing is, double check that this tie rod is okay. You're in here anyway, so if it's bad, you might want to replace it. Okay, so we have our shaft loose. Now right in the back here, there's a big bolt that holds this strut on. That's going to be a biggie. That is a 17 millimeter. Frankly, I'm regretting not leaving the tie rod on right now. It's pretty tight. Last thing to knock loose is the ball joint, and that again is a 14 millimeter. It's a through bolt style. So once you got the head of the bolt level with the thread, take your hammer and give it a little tap. Of course, it's not going to come out because it's stubborn. Cheater bar pretty soon. Alright, so I didn't film this next part because it was being real stubborn, but what you need to do is once you get the ball joint pinch bolt out, you need to stick a chisel or something and hammer it in between this part here at the lower ball joint. Then you can slide it up and it'll come right out. And then what you need to do is you need to pull the knuckle out so you can get the CV axle out. And then what you do is you need to hammer or chisel in between this big guy and hammer on this edge of the steering knuckle here so it comes out of the strut. So now that we're done that, we can go to the shop and have this knuckle pressed out. So you can see it's pretty loose in there. So we're getting a new one. Alright, so it's time to put the damn bearing back in, or the whole knuckle. So you can see it's pretty notchy and it's pretty loose. So unfortunately I had to get a whole new hub assembly because that's the only way they come. So, I guess first things first, we're going to start with, I've been kind of cleaning up everything here, but this isn't really going to be too easy. These things don't like to go back together. So first thing I'm going to start with is a little anti-seize on the area where the strut goes in. And I'm going to put a dab of anti-seize on the ball joint where the pinch bolt goes through. Now, one thing that they told me is Mazda has a TSB on these things, to where you should use some retaining compound. And what that will do is that'll prevent the... Turn, you bugger. That should prevent the bearing from walking out, because there's actually nothing that holds the bearing in place. It's just been a really rough day for me so far. So I just want to get this job done and go to my cabin for the weekend. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to slip the CV shaft into the... Or we can start with the... I guess we can start with the knuckle, but nothing comes easy on this cart. Ever. So what you may have to do is you may have to wedge your chisel in there again. Careful not to force it too far. This is cast iron. Now, if you kind of put it where the bolt is supposed to go, you'll wedge it apart far enough to where you can just slide it in somewhat nicely. Nothing comes easy on this car, like I said. So you want to get it at the point where you get the bolt through. Now, what we need to do is guide the CV axle into place. This whole job is one massive wrestling act. So if you like wrestling, good for you. You got yourself a wrestling match. Okay, so now for the tricky part. You have to push down on the God, if this thing doesn't fit, I'm going to be so angry. There we go. Slide the CV shaft in. I gotta, there we go, push it back. There we go. So we just need to get the ball joint up to the point where the pinch bolt can go through. So that looks pretty good. Now wherever I put the damn pinch bolt. So I guess first things first is we're going to put the strut mount back in. Now, if I don't recall correctly, I believe this one is 17 mil. Just get it snug. You don't have to, or just loosely in there for right now. You don't have to get everything right and tight. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little anti-seize on the body of this bolt. This is the ball joint pinch bolt. Just like this. This one's easier to get back in than it is to get out because you're not hammering on the threads. I'll just give it a nice bath of this stuff. Now, it doesn't look like we're quite there yet. The nice thing versus the one I did on the PT Cruiser is this one actually looks like the groove goes all the way around. There we go, that's a little bit better. A nice gush of anti-seize everywhere when I drove it home, but whatever, don't care. I just want to get this job done. A little messy, never hurt. Put the bolt, or the nut back on. Now this one I believe is 14 mil. I believe I left my ratchet over by the there it is. There we go. Of course the bolt is spinning. They can never make it easy. This bearing is probably like the worst design I've ever seen. Since you have to, you basically have to put pressure on the balls in order to get the bearing actually back in. So just make sure if you're doing this job and all the pressing and stuff yourself, use some kind of retaining compound or some kind of Loctite in the bearing. Because there's actually no C-clip or anything. Like most manufacturers use a clip to hold the bearing in, but this one does not. Here we go. Alright. So, now we need to finish tightening the bolt for the strut. This one goes together a hell of a lot easier and it comes apart, that's for sure. No substituting for this bolt. This is a very high strength one. It supports the weight of the front suspension, so make sure that one's good and tight. So now, we have two choices. There's no real exact way to put this thing back together, but... So now in our bearing kit, we have the right bolt as well. This is the CV axle retaining bolt. Unlike most vehicles that use a nut, this one actually uses a bolt. Seems kind of odd, but whatever. I'm not going to question the engineers anymore because this is a pretty shit design to begin with. Everything on this car I've been fighting for I don't know how long, but it's just getting frustrating. So we're going to get this one nice and tight. There we go. You don't want to reef that one on too hard because that's not a very big bolt. So now, time to put the tie rod on. This again is your nut with a 14mm head, which I probably scattered here somewhere. There it is. The trick with the tie rod is to keep it supported so that the taper gets jammed into the taper gets jammed down into the... of course it's not working. Alright, well, plan B, C, or D, anyone? Well, hooray for redneck engineering. I got a pair of box grips that are holding the tie rod into the steering knuckle. Well, let's pop the... There we go. So now that that's all the way in, we have this itty-bitty little clip. And that's that. Now we need to plug in the ABS sensor. Now if you're pressing this out yourself, be careful. Mind you, if you're pressing this out yourself, you're probably not going to be watching this video. Alright, so all we have left to do is we need to put the brakes back on. Alright. Probably worth it to put a little bit of anti-seize in on the rotor hat here, and a little on the backs of these. I'm going to put a dab of it on each of the studs. Now these are brand new. Everything on this hub is brand new. But be warned that it's these things are fairly pricey. There we go. Now we're going to take our caliper mounting bracket.
How's it going, honey?
Not great.
Not great.
And these two bolts are 17mm. I think they're 17. Looks about right. Don't be afraid to give these ones the beans here. We give the pads a little coating of anti-seize. Now, outer pad goes in there, and we can pull the caliper free from its little hole there. And this guy goes in like this, if I can get it in there. Just want to double check these mounting bracket bolts. So we go back to our 7mm. There we go. Now what's left is to put these two caps back in. There's the other one right there. All right. Get all our tools here out of the way. And now, put our severely worn out tire back on. Test drive. First thing, make sure that the brakes work okay, because you took them off, even though you may not have worked on them. You did take them apart, so everything feels good. hear any noise that she was complaining about before. There's crap all in the trunk, so some of the rattling you might be hearing is from the trunk. Don't break any traffic laws when doing this. This looks like a drunk driver is the only problem. Feels okay. I don't. It's got a really crappy tires on the front too, so, or actually on everything, so. Not surprised they're making a bit of a noise, but I do not hear nor do I feel the rubbing noise that she was talking about. This car was awfully frustrating to work on, I tell you. The car feels good though. Drives well. That bearing was pretty toast when I got it out. Just gritty, and it was loose and worn out. It was definitely at the end of its life. So she was complaining of the rubbing noise when turning right. I don't hear anything. That road noise coming from the tires is real obnoxious, but they're old and weathercraft, and she said she's getting new ones in a couple of weeks, so I think we're okay with that. I love this little car. I love to drive it, but man, is it a pain in the ass to get parts for it. I gotta tell you, there's stuff that's based on build date and stuff like that, so. For having a smaller motor, she's got quite a bit of pap. She's quite agile too. I really like this car. I love driving it, but frankly, working on it's a real pain in the ass. Same thing with rear brakes. 2 different style pads for 2 different model build dates. It's just, it just pisses me off. This car has been nothing but a royal pain in my side. Alright, I think we're all done. That door panel rattles like hell. I'm gonna shut it off. Anyway, to sum it up, this is not a fun job, but you just gotta get the right parts. That's the main thing. Make sure you get the correct parts, because if not, you're gonna have a real fun time. In this case, the hub and the bearing are one big chunk, so you can't replace either separately. You got to replace it all at once, which makes the bearing triple the price. So now I get to tell the customer this, and she's going to be thrilled, but just be careful when you buy stuff for this car. Make sure that you give them the VIN and the build date and all that other stuff. That's very, very important. Anyway, I got to go. I got a lot of stuff to do, so hope you enjoyed this and enjoyed laughing at my misfortunes. Follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/6speeddakota, Twitter at 6speeddakota, Google plus 6speeddakota, and always here on YouTube. All right, take it easy, everyone.